There are a lot of unknown events that will take place in Game of Thrones Season 8, but one thing is for certain, and that's that literally everyone has a chance of dying. No matter who the character is or how important you think they are to the story and to the endgame of the entirety of this series, all of that could literally come to a screeching halt. Going into Season 8, just know one thing: no one is safe. In this video, I want to go over several leaks that were sent to me involving how a few of the main cast members may die. Now remember, the leaked part of this video, as always, is in air quotations and is more or less meant to be taken with a grain of salt, as nothing is 100% confirmed until it airs on your television screens. But as always, here's your sign, and let's begin. Before we get started, please slap a like on this video, as the like goal is going to be 1,420. Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then, this is the most important part, make sure you have notifications turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this long night. Now, one of the things that made this show famous is the death of main characters. It had been done before in television shows, but nothing quite on the level of Game of Thrones. This is insane. Ned Stark, Sean Bean, the actor who we know for a certain, if you've never read the books, is going to make it several seasons. This guy is the one person who can help the Seven Kingdoms get on the right track. We know he has the power to rid the realm of this little cunt named Joffrey, and when his death comes in episode 9 of the first season, it definitely hits us out of nowhere. We think even all the way, speaking for myself, even all the way up into the very few seconds before Ilyn Payne swings that sword, I'm thinking in my head, something has got to happen. There's going to be some magical character who's going to show up and whisk Ned away and save the day, but that's not the case. Ned Stark dies, and regardless of whatever arc you had for him in your head in upcoming seasons, he's gone. Death, for the most part, in this TV show is final, and just because Jon Snow and Beric have been resurrected before, I don't know if that's going to be used as a scapegoat so much in this final season. Of course, there's always a chance for a few of the champions of Lore to be brought back, but for anyone not chosen by the Lord of the Light, you're kind of screwed. And that brings me into the leaks. Now, these were sent to me by a few different people through the DMs over on Twitter. Speaking of which, make sure you go follow me at Sir_Hunts. But the first person states that in Game of Thrones Season 8, Grey Worm will die in Episode 3. He's one of the first main characters to go, and his death goes out with him being surrounded by Whites after they breach Winterfell. The Whites are somehow able to break the formation of the Unsullied, and Grey Worm is forced out on his own. He gets killed quickly and then is resurrected by a nearby White, only to begin killing his former Unsullied brothers. Now, this person states that the next person who dies in the episode is Beric, and it's during episode 3 as well. Beric barely survives the battle. He shows up with Ed and Tormund after the dead have taken the battlements of Winterfell, and then shortly after arriving, Beric fights his way to Jon. The two of them slaughter the dead. There's lots of slow motion fighting scenes, and there's a small break in the fighting, and the dead seem to finally start retreating. In this time, Jon asks Beric to try and find his family. Jon further mentions that Bran was last seen in the Godswood, and Beric immediately leaves and begins searching. Once Beric enters the Weirwood Forest, he notices a large puddle of blood next to a weirwood tree. The camera pans over Bran's dead body. Beric then walks towards Bran. He begins praying to the Lord of Light over his body almost immediately. A few moments pass and Beric gets up, thinking that his prayers to the Lord of Light were unsuccessful, and begins to leave to go and tell Jon Snow of Bran Stark's fate, and just as he exits, Bran's voice can be heard calling to Beric, and then Beric collapses. And this person mentions as a side note, and don't worry, I'm going to save my thoughts for all of this towards the end of the video, I just wanted to continue reading these leaks all out just for pacing's sake, but this person mentions as a side note that Beric gave Bran the kiss of life, and this was in exchange for his own life. Now, the next few people that this person is claiming die in this same episode in Game of Thrones Season 8 Episode 3 are Varys, Gilly, and Baby Sam. Now, in the trailer, we actually all saw them in what appears to be the crypts of Winterfell, hiding out waiting for the dead or the Battle of Winterfell to sort of take place. And just sort of relating back to what I was ranting on at the beginning of this video about Ned Stark and how you have this trope in your head that's set up in the show just shatters it. One of the things that the show is famous for is people who hide out during battles somehow survive. And the reason why I wanted to mention this leak in particular in this video is because it kind of turns that notion on its head. Now, obviously, it's seemingly more legitimate when you reference something from the trailer, because whatever someone builds around that, it's immediately going to seem more believable because we've seen part of the scene happen in the actual trailer for Season 8. But we still have to remember, most of these leaks are most likely horseshit. But that aside, this person states that Varys, Gilly, and Baby Sam will die die in Game of Thrones Season 8 Episode 3. The scene is tragic, and the moment of them in the trailer is just before the dead show up. The magic that was protecting the crypts is destroyed by Bran when he visits Jon to tell him of his true lineage when Jon Snow is in the crypts of Winterfell. No one in Winterfell is made aware of this, but it's similar to when Bran broke the magic on the Three-Eyed Raven's cave. This leads everyone in Winterfell to believe that the crypts are the safest place. They hide everyone who cannot fight down there in the crypts, and Missandei, Sansa, Tyrion are all able to escape with the help of Jaime at some point during the episode. But Varys, Gilly, and the others are not so lucky. Just as the dead begin entering the crypts, Baby Sam begins screaming uncontrollably. This attracts the dead to their location, and it's a bloodbath. The camera cuts to black before showing everyone die on screen. Now, in my opinion, that does sound a little bit ridiculous. I feel like there's going to be a few of them that try to escape, and there will probably be one person who willingly sacrifices themselves to allow the others to be let out. But the one thing I absolutely love about this is the idea that the dead are going to go into the crypts of Winterfell because everyone in Winterfell thinks that this is the safest place to be. Just like how in Season 1, how we all thought, if you've never read the books, that Ned Stark is the safest character and there's just no way he's going to die, at least in the first season, giving everyone in Winterfell that fake sense of security thinking that they're going to be safe in the crypts would be very similar to how we felt about Ned in the very first season. As far as who this person mentions dies below the crypts, I do think that Varys may be taken out just as one of those deaths that may happen out of the blue because the showrunners might not know what to do with him in the end, and his death could definitely be used to further the storyline, but I think Gilly and Baby Sam are going to make it until the end. Sam is going to be the one who lives to sort of tell the story to future generations of Westeros. Another gripe I had with this person's death leak was the fact that Bran we don't really know what happens to him and he's somehow just found dead by Beric. That's not believable at all. Bran is supposed to be like a Luke Skywalker, so his hand in the battle for Winterfell is likely going to be pretty heavy. I imagine Bran actually being out on the battlements of Winterfell and trying to use his abilities to better the situation between the army of the living and the army of the dead. Can you imagine if Bran somehow wargs the massive direwolf pack? Maybe not during battle, but maybe he's able to control Nymeria's mind for a bit to get her headed to Winterfell in order for them to have just extra security. The direwolves have always protected the Stark, so I don't think Bran will need to warg them in order to get them to do what they need to do, but I do think it may be possible for Bran to warg into Nymeria to lead her pack to Winterfell and maybe just sort of send her a message. With the Battle of Winterfell being all but confirmed by literally everyone on the television show to be happening in episode 3, then I'm pretty sure the first 2 episodes are obviously going to be the meet and greets, characters who haven't seen each other in a while and characters who have never been in the same scene before. There's also going to be a bunch of rallying of whatever forces anyone can. I'm sure Jaime's going to have a heavy hand in doing that. Maybe he's going to be the one to bring Edmure into the game. We know Cersei is going to be having the Golden Company arrive for extra security, so there's no way that we're not going to get some sort of scene with Bran going, hey, I see everything. I know there's a massive pack of wolves running around. Let's bring them home and beef up security. Now, I sort of feel like the very last moments of the trailer are going to be how episode 2 ends. It's going to end on a cliffhanger. That being the defenses of Winterfell being prepared and they're somehow aware of the onslaught of the dead. Now, recently the episode links have been released, and believe it or not, episodes 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all coming in right at 80 minutes. This, in my opinion, sort of confirms that the first 2 episodes of Game of Thrones Season 8 will be a bit of a setup for the final 4 episodes. But let's jump into the very last death leak that I want to talk about for this video. Now remember, I told you at the very beginning, for this final season, no one is safe. Literally no one. I'm not saying Arya, who's been known as no one before, is safe, even though George has sort of confirmed that he'd never kill her in his books. No one is safe. This person mentions that Daenerys is set to die in Game of Thrones Season 8. She is killed during a massive fight with the Night King in the skies over Winterfell. The battle lasts for an intense 12 minutes. 2/3 of the budget was spent on this scene for the episode. The scene begins with Dothraki warriors screaming. Daenerys then mounts Drogon and takes off into the night sky. She disappears out of view shortly until the Night King cuts into view and begins billowing flame into the night air. The symbolism and the beauty of the blue and red flame crashing together makes eyes melt. This scene is easily the most dazzling event of the series. It is tragic to watch the dragons tear into each other, but there is a beauty about it, almost a dance of sorts, this person mentions. The battle comes to a head when Viserion is forced to land after Drogon rips apart one of his rings. Viserion goes crashing through the air and the Night King with him. Jon Snow is on the ground fighting, and everything sort of stops when the Night King falls. Jon has a bit of a smirk on his face and begins making his way towards the side of the crest. Daenerys then grips on Drogon tightly, signaling him to travel after the Night King. She quickly arrives at where Viserion fell from the sky, and Dany then dismounts Drogon and begins searching for the body of the Night King. The corpse of Viserion is in terrible shape, and his neck appears to have broken during the landing. Drogon suffers from massive wounds as well, and he has several gaping holes around his neck and is clearly greatly injured and on the verge of death. As Daenerys gets further away, he starts becoming restless, as if he knows something about this whole situation is off. Just then, blue eyes appear behind Daenerys as she turns around to look towards Drogon, and right as Drogon lets out a scream, an icy dagger is forced through Daenerys' heart, and all she feels is her warm blood running down her chest. As Daenerys falls to the ground, the camera cuts to black, and then we catch up with Jon, who is now nearing the site of Daenerys' death and Viserion's crash. Jon quickly figures out what just happened. He notices Daenerys' lifeless body in the snow, surrounded in a puddle of blood. He then sees Drogon writhing in pain and Viserion's corpse. Jon falls to his knees in disbelief, and the camera then again cuts to black. We then pick back up with the battle at Winterfell, which is still raging on. Jaime and Brienne have taken command of all the forces and seem to be pushing the dead back. At this point, no one knows what happened to the Night King, and Podrick notices an unknown army approaching from the south. He claims they're wielding flaming torches. It's Melisandre, and she has brought the warrior priest from Valor. The tide of the battles in Winterfell begins to turn. The fire priests are successful in burning the remaining dead and forcing them into retreat, and the episode ends with Daenerys' body being washed and treated by Kinvara and Melisandre. The two of them are able to resurrect Daenerys, and the final scene is with Jon and Daenerys talking around a fire. Winterfell is safe for the moment, and the whereabouts of the Night King are unknown. Jon is unaware of what happened to Bran, and has not yet been told of the Golden Company kidnapping Tyrion in the middle of the battle. Now, I know that took a crazy turn towards the end, but there's really no point in me going through and nitpicking all of the faults in this leak, because like I mentioned, it's for purely entertainment purposes. The one thing that my biggest gripe with it is the fact that it completely negated Rhaegal. Like, bro, Dany's got 2 dragons. I'm pretty sure if she's off fighting the Night King on the back of Viserion, Rhaegal's gonna be right there next to her. There's a possibility that Rhaegal may be helping Jon Snow, but literally at no point during this entire leak is he mentioned. Another thing is the way that Daenerys dies. I don't really think she's going to die at all in the final season. I think her and Jon Snow are gonna make it into the end. I don't know if they're gonna have children and get married in the end, but I do believe that Jon Snow and Daenerys will be present and alive during the final episode of A Game of Thrones. One thing that I liked about all of these leaks together is that at some point in each of them, it had R'hllor's powers being used to bring back the living. We do know that the Night King has this ability, and for right now, Beric and Jon are the only ones who we've seen have this power used on. One of the age-old rumors that everyone in the fandom seems to believe about Game of Thrones Season 8 is that at some point there will be a death fake out. Initially, it was supposed to be Alis Karstark dying and everyone thinks it's Sansa, until the next episode it's revealed that Sansa is alive. I was sent a leak personally that claimed it was Jaime, and apparently Jaime appears as though he dies in the episode, but in the very next episode we realize that he still somehow survived his wounds and is healed. All that aside, in my personal opinion, I do feel like that there will be at least one fake out death in Game of Thrones Season 8. I do believe that either Jon Snow or Daenerys will die again, only to be resurrected. One of my personal theories, and I know this is sort of miserable to even think about, but if there's a possibility that Daenerys dies, maybe the fact that she's resurrected is only made possible because of the sacrifice of her unborn child in order to bring her back to life. Even though literally none of us want that to happen, we have to remember that anything is possible in this final season. Alright, and with that being said, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could please slap a like on this video. So like goal is going to be 1,420. Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then this is the most important part, make sure you have notifications turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this long night. Super special shout out to every single person watching this video, and a super special thank you to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews. I want to thank each and every one of you for watching this video. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunts Reviews.